Harpies are often depicted as some of the most repulsive creatures in Greek mythology. Their name, meaning robber, reflects their role as thieves, often at the behest of the gods. However, the image of the harpy as we know it today has undergone many changes from its original form. In ancient myth, the harpy was a creature associated with storm winds, considered a daimon, a personified spirit, who brought destruction and chaos. The ancient Greeks believed that they were fierce wind spirits that reflected the wild and unpredictable nature of storms. They lived on the islands of the Strophades, although some stories place them in caves on Crete or at the gates of Orcus. In their work, the Harpies often stole food or dragged sinners to Tartarus. All with Zeus's approval, of course. Physically, the harpy is known as a half-woman, half-bird creature, with sharp claws and a frightening presence. However, this depiction is different from its early appearance. In the beginning, as described by Hesiod, the harpy was a beautiful woman who floated gracefully through the air, faster than a bird. Sierra Tolentino in Harpies, Storm Spirits and Winged Women, as published on the History Cooperative website, says that this idyllic image slowly faded over time. In the time of Aeschylus, a tragedian transformed the image of the harpy into a dirty and hideous figure, with a disgusting appearance. They snore, their eyes are wet with hatred, and their clothes are shabby, she says. In myth, harpies have a more complex role than just being beasts. They are often associated with the west wind and appear in stories such as the fate of Phineas, a king who was tortured by them. Harpies are also associated with the gods and the horses of Achilles, who are said to be descendants of the harpies named Podarge and Zephyrus, the god of the west wind. Although harpies are usually depicted as female, mythology is not entirely consistent. Hesiod mentions two harpies named Aello, swift storm, and Ocypete, swiftwing, while Homer mentions one, Podarge, swift foot. The Roman poet Virgil later added Solano, dark one, to the list. Harpies may have deeper roots than just Greek mythology. Some scholars have suggested that the inspiration for these creatures came from ancient Near Eastern art, such as bronze cauldrons in Urartu depicting winged women, Tolentino says. However, the idea that harpies were always depicted as bird-woman hybrids is not entirely accurate. In early depictions, they were more of a beautiful personification of the storm wind, rather than the fearsome monsters we know today, she explains. The harpy's transformation from a graceful wind spirit to a fearsome creature shows the evolution of Greek mythology. It reflects how humans understood and depicted the wild and uncontrollable forces of nature. The harpy, in all its forms, remains a symbol of the uncertainty and destructive power hidden in nature. The modern image of the harpy was largely formed during the Middle Ages, an era when Greek myths blended with the European imagination. Although the era is more familiar with Arthurian legends, dragons, and fae magic, the harpy of Greek mythology still has its place. During this period, the image of the harpy began to be used as a heraldic symbol, especially by Germanic families, who called it the Jungfraunadel or virgin eagle. In East Frisia, the harpy, a human head with the body of a bird of prey, was often chosen to represent strength and assertiveness. The message was clear. If provoked, they would respond with force and without mercy. This symbolism is rarely seen in English heraldry, but on the European continent, the harpy has become a powerful warning sign. In Dante Alighieri's 14th century epic, the harpy is given a special place in the Inferno. In Canto 13, Dante depicts the harpy as a forest dweller of torment in the seventh circle of hell, where those who commit suicide are punished. Dante writes, "Here the loathsome harpies make their nests, who drive the Trojans from the Strophades. These harpies are not tormentors of the damned souls, but rather winged creatures who crow incessantly from their nests, creating an atmosphere of suffering." Dante's description of the harpies inspired artists such as William Blake, who in 1824 created the famous painting, "The Wood of the Self-Murderers, the Harpies and the Suicides." In Greek mythology, the Harpies symbolized the destructive power of the winds and the wrath of Zeus, as depicted by their title of Hounds of Zeus. They were extensions of the god, carrying out his will with harshness and ruthlessness. The Harpies were also a symbol of fear of the god's wrath. If someone suddenly disappeared without a trace, the Greeks often attributed it to the actions of the Harpies, who carried the victim to Tartarus to be judged by the Erinyes, or Furies. The presence of the Harpies in mythology reflected the cosmic order that the Greeks believed was the balance of the universe. Whatever their actions, they were a reflection of the will of the gods, a reminder of the undeniable power of the divine will. Harpies have long been feared, both for their terrifying appearance and their destructive nature. In ancient Greece, they were seen as evil forces, cruel and ruthless creatures devoid of compassion. Harpies were hardly the kind of people who could be considered friends of humans. As the Hounds of Zeus, they acted at the will of the supreme god. When terrible storms struck, Zeus would often send these daimons to do his bidding. With a reputation for violence and brutality, it is no wonder that the harpy is often considered a symbol of evil. Although rarely mentioned in Greek myth, the Harpies played a significant role as the enforcers of Zeus's will. They are known not for their origins or lineage, but for their very real and haunting actions. As the personification of the storm wind, the Harpies were an extension of Zeus's wrath. If one dared to offend the god, punishment would come in the form of a group of hideous half-bird, half-woman creatures. Their primary duty was to consign the rule breakers to Tartarus, the dark and terrifying underworld. However, before carrying out their punishment, they often showed their ferocity by attacking first, creating terror before the god's justice was carried out. In the ancient Greek world, the Harpies were sent by the gods, namely Zeus, Hera and Athena, to punish people who had angered the gods. They were under the dominion of Zeus and were often referred to as the Hounds of Zeus. The Harpies were seen as being bad luck as they could come out of nowhere, steal, destroy property, and wreak havoc on people's lives. They were always ravenous and would steal food or eat their victims before carrying them away. If a person or object suddenly disappeared into thin air, the common conclusion would be that a harpy had carried them off in their sharp talons. The myth most famously associated with the Harpies is the tale of King Phineas. King Phineas was the king of Thrace who had offended the gods. In the most famous version of the myth, he had remarried after his first wife had died, and in his eagerness to make his new bride happy, he allowed her to torture his children. In other versions, King Phineas was given the gift of prophecy but infuriated the gods by revealing too many of their plans. As punishment, Phineas was blinded, and the gods sent the Harpies to torment him. The Harpies refused to let him eat by constantly snatching his food or spoiling it with their foul stench. As a result, Phineas never got enough to eat and started wasting away. He was finally saved by Jason and the Argonauts, who had stopped over in Thrace during their journey to collect the Golden Fleece. Two of the Argonauts, Calais and Zeus, the brothers of Phineas' first wife, wanted to kill the Harpies, but their sister, Iris, persuaded the Argonauts to spare them if they promised to keep away from King Phineas. The Harpies were then driven off to the Strophades islands in the Ionian Sea.